Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, first on behalf of government, I would like to express our heartfelt sympathy for the bereaved family and also to inform the House that one of the hallmarks of the NRM government is peace and security. This matter, Mr. Speaker, will be investigated by the Ministry of Internal Affairs immediately, and then who will also be in touch with the communities in that district, and then at an appropriate time will inform Parliament. But in terms of action, the Minister of Internal Affairs, who is also coming to the House, will be informed immediately to swing into action and investigate this matter and make sure that those who are responsible are brought to book.
Honorable Minister, we need a preliminary update tomorrow, 10 o'clock, on this issue. Let the Minister come tomorrow, 10 o'clock, and tell us what is going on. Thank you. Bunya?
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Waira Chwale Majegere is my name, Bunya East Mayuge. Right Honorable Speaker, I have a voter in the name of Mudenyo Sulaiman, who went missing after being arrested as one of the main suspects of those who allegedly killed Felix Kawesi. The family is struggling to come in, but allow me to read the brief statement, the facts as they gave them to me. Arrest of Mudenyo Sulaiman, Imam, Mpungwe Mozik, Mpungwe Sabu County, Bunya East, Mayuge District. The above Mudenyo Sulaiman is an imam of Mpungwe Sub-County, but a resident of Mwezi Village, Minor Parish in Mpungwe Sub-County, Bunya East, Mayuge District. He was arrested at his home at Mwezi around 9:30 on 9th April 2017. That is among the many people who were suspected to have killed my friend IGP Kawesi Felix. They took alongside with him his son, Kasim Mulawa is also on the team which is outside. They were taken to a place referred to as Wembley in Buligo in Igang. The son was released and they started visiting him at Wembley while taking to him food. When the family went back next time, he was not there. They referred them to Narufenya in Jinja. When they went to Narufenya, they couldn't find him. And again, they were referred to Chireka. Still, they could not trace him in Chireka, and they were referred to Luzira prison. In Luzira prison, his son, another son, Umaru Mulawa, searched for him, but could not find him. The family of Mudenyo Sulaiman contacted the DISO of Mayuge, the DPs of Mayuge, the RDs of Mayuge, but all of them did not have any information about their father. That they contacted the RISO, this is Regional Internal Security Officer Jinja, and also did not have any information about the Imam. Imam Sulaiman has 4 wives, some are pregnant, and many children, with many children. Some children are sick and are not going to school. They came to me on 26th May 2017 as their last resort. I'm also appealing to you, Right Honorable Speaker, that you order the Minister of Internal Affairs to produce Imam Mudenyo Sulaiman to his family within 12 hours and report back to Parliament. Secondly, Right Honorable Speaker, that Parliament also investigates the legal status of the said Wembley in Buligo in Iganga District. I'm yours faithfully, Honorable Waira Chwale Majegere, Bunya East. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, in a similar way, the Minister of Internal Affairs will report to this House on this matter tomorrow at 10.
Tomorrow.
Mr. Speaker, I'm standing here as acting government chief whip.
Let's have this matter tomorrow. Let the Minister come, 10 o'clock tomorrow. we'll have these two issues listened to. Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I want to thank the Minister, actually, from the bottom of my heart. You are doing a good job in this House, whenever we have you here. But, Mr. Speaker, the procedure matter I want to raise, we have sort of handled this matter. And the issues coming out now of particular individuals are very pertinent. And I want to put this on record. The issue of Kawesi and this people you're talking about. You see, the killer.
Honorable Member, you wrote on
I'm on the procedural matter, Mr. Speaker.
Please raise the procedural matter.
And I'm putting it on record, Mr. Speaker.
No, put the procedural issue
the
and the rule
matter
and
I'm
proceed.
putting up, Mr. Speaker, is, wouldn't it be procedure okay that when the minister is coming, does not only handle the matter of Waira, the issues of people being arrested about Kawesi are becoming too many. And I want to state it, Mr. Speaker, the killers of this man were, the type of death was well guarded. Whenever we get many people involved in the death of this person, it becomes abnormal. That death was highly guarded. It was highly guarded.
Thank you.
And that's the procedure matter I'm raising, because we are going to get more of this kind. Even me, Nikalungu, I'm about to bring those who have got lost and they are attached to the same death. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. We'll hear from the ministers responsible for these matters tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Next item.
Bills Committee stage, the sale of goods and supply of services Bill 2015. Clause 35.
Clause 35, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes an amendment on clause 35, which deals with duties of seller and buyer. In the head note of that clause, the committee proposes that a word be inserted, that is, the word supplier, immediately after the word seller appearing in the head note. And the justification is to align the head note to the content of the provision.
No, immediately after.
Mr. Chairman, I have pointed it out here in the beginning, that seller refers to the sale of goods. Then supplier is to the supplier of services. So we want it to encompass both the seller of goods and then the supplier of services.
So how have you proposed it?
We are
So
saying,
what will it read now?
it is in the head note, we are saying, after the word,
No, what would the head note read now?
it will read, duties of seller, comma, buyer, duties of seller and buyer and supplier.
You could have used some comma somewhere, it would help.
I think there should have been another amendment of a punctuation, which we need to bring out. So it should have been duties of seller, comma, supplier, and buyer.
Okay? Attorney General? Put your questions on record so that we know.
Isn't it later, Mr. Chairman, to say duties of parties to a contract?
Part 4, we're dealing with part 4 of the bill. Performance of contract of sale and supply of services. And the first provision is duties of the seller, comma, supplier, and buyer. I put a question to that. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 35 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 35 as amended stand part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 36.
Put the question that clause 36 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 37.
37, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, we have dealt with a similar
It's
clause
a consequential amendment
It is like
from
consequential. We have adopted
third person to
that
third
from
party.
third person to third party, wherever it appears, for consistency.
And that is in the...
So we are proposing that we substitute the phrase third person. For the phrase third person, the word third party, where it appears in this provision. Justification is for consistency, usage of the phrase in the bill, and actually it is now consequential because we have adopted it before.
I put a question that amendment. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 37 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 37 as amended stands under the bill. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 38.
Clause 38, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In clause 38, the committee proposes deletion of subclause 4 of that clause, and if that is done, consequentially, a deletion of subclause 5, subclause 6, and subclause 7. Subclause that we propose to delete, that is 4, the justification for its deletion is that subclause 2 and 3 suffices. It suffices. And therefore, we do not need clause 4 to appear there. It is actually of no value in that provision. So it's a deletion. It really doesn't change the meaning. It is not carrying anything significant in there.
Does it pose a danger to the flow and interpretation of the law? Is there a problem of consistency? Because sometimes the draftspeople, when they put those details, they have seen something else somewhere which you might have missed.
Maybe if there is anything we haven't seen, the minister will clarify it to us. But Mr. Chairman, if you are to look at clause 2 and 3, and then, if I may read, clause 2, it says, where the seller delivers to the buyer a quantity of goods larger than the seller contracted to sell, the buyer may accept the goods included in the contract and reject the rest. Or the buyer may reject the whole, and where the buyer accepts the whole of the goods delivered, the buyer must pay for them at the contract rate. Then 3, where the seller delivers to the buyer the goods the seller contracted to sell mixed with goods of different description not included in the contract, the buyer may accept the goods which are in accordance with the contract and reject the rest, or the buyer may reject the whole. Now, when you go to 4, which we feel is of no, adding no value in this clause, it says, notwithstanding 1, 2, 3, the buyer who is not a consumer may not reject goods where the seller delivers a quantity of goods less than the seller contracted to sell. Or that the consumer may not reject all the goods where the seller delivers the quantity of goods larger than the seller contracted to sell. So,
Continue.
That is, if there's shortfall, or as the case may be, the excess is so slight that it would be unreasonable for the buyer to do so.
Now you know why they put it there. So it's not
Mr. Chairman, may...
Now you know why they put it there. That issue of the slight which we've amended to minor. because it's a different definition from the upper ones. Now, if it is so small, then it should not come, should not reject.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would still think that 2 and 3 are sufficient to cover this.
No.
But if it doesn't,
It's not.
I will concede, given that we have
No, it's not.
dealt with it before.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, actually, if you look at subclause 4, critically it imposes what we call the subvariance principle. For example, you are supposed to receive the quantity of, say, 6,000. They deliver 10,000. Your duty is only limited to accepting the 6,000. So, to me, I feel there is no reason as to why we should delete subclause 4 for one simple reason, that it brings out the essence of the subvariance principle, because you are supposed to take what you contracted for and nothing less or above.
Attorney General?
I support the land honorable member, because this clause is qualified by the conclusion. If the shortfall, as the case may be, the excess is so minor that it would be unreasonable for the buyer to do so. There's nothing wrong with that.
Chair? Chair,
Chairman.
please.
Mr. Chairman, you protect me from Honorable Bahati.
No, you don't.
He's actually trying to intimidate me. But, Mr. Chairman, leader of government business on the microphone, I concede with the position of the Attorney General and your guidance.
Thank you. But I think there's the improvement of minor instead of
Yeah,
slight.
exactly. That's what
Can you propose it properly?
Yes.
Yes.
I was proposing that we delete the word slight and we amend it with the word minor wherever slight appears in this provision.
So, honorable members who agree that it will now be consequential, where they've used slight in this context, we will change it to minor. Can I put the question to this amendment? All those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 38 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 38 as amended stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 39.
I put the question that clause 39 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 40.
Clause 40, members. I put the question that clause 40 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 41.
Clause 41, Chair. Honorable members, I'd like you to participate in this process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have a proposal on to amend clause 41, sub-clause 5. To redraft the provision, to read as follows. That where the seller fails to give notice to the buyer under subsection 4 above, the goods shall be deemed to be at his or her risk during that sea transit. Justification is to harmonize the provision with subclause 4. The duty to ensure the goods should not be placed on the seller, should not be placed on the seller outright, but should only arise where the seller fails to notify the buyer in accordance with subclause 4 of this clause.
Minister, Attorney General, any comment on this? Is it necessary to say above? Under subsection 4 above? Chair, subsection 4 above.
Mr. Chairman, your guidance is most welcome on this, but I
Subsection
think when we
4
say
subsection 4
Sub-
is subsection 4.
subsection 4 and we are referring to that section, then it is sufficient to bring out the meaning. So the word above can be dropped out of this proposed amendment and we carry it as.
Yes, Mitoma?
I'm thinking that if you say subsection 4, it may refer to any subsection. So is it specifically within the clause? Okay.
It is the same clause, it could not be referring to any other subsection. Because if it is cross-referencing, they'll say subsection 4 of section so and so. Attorney General, I'll put the question to the amendment as proposed by the chair and improved. I put the question, that amendment, will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 41 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 41 as amended stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no.
Clause 42.
Honorable members, I do not hear the voting. Only a few members are voting. Yes, but I haven't put any question now. Why are you voting?
Clause 42.
Clause 42, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes to amend clause 42, which deals with the risk where goods are delivered elsewhere than at the place of the sale. That we substitute the word buyer appearing in clause 2. We are substitute for the word buyer appearing in clause 2, subclause 2, the word seller.
Subclause 2? In clause 42 has no subsection. Subclauses.
42, just a moment. Oh, sorry. It should be line. That substitute for the word buyer appearing in line 2, the word seller. And the justification for this is to accord the provision its appropriate meaning for the purpose of clarity.
Attorney General?
Mr. Chairman, then it becomes superfluous because you are saying where the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk at a place other than that where they are when sold, the seller shall, unless otherwise agreed, taken risk. You have already said it is at the seller's risk. So why do we say this? Do we need to have it like this? No, not to change the buyer. Because when you say where the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk, at a place other than that where they are when sold, the seller shall, unless otherwise agreed, take any risk of deterioration in the goods necessary incident to the I don't see the import of this clause. Because in the first place, the seller has agreed to deliver the goods at his own risk. So, why do we repeat again that it will be at his own risk?
Mr. Chairman. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I look at the statement that the current statement on the clause is more correct and more appropriate. Because it reads, where the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk at a place other than that where they are when sold. The buyer shall, unless otherwise agreed, take any risk, etc. So I really feel, Mr. Chairman, this statement is more appropriate. Because if you replace the word buyer again with the word seller, it may change the meaning. So what we have currently is more appropriate.
Maybe somebody wanted to say the buyer shall not take any risk of deterioration in the goods necessarily incidental to the cost of transit. The seller has already agreed to deliver the goods at his own risk. So you are saying the buyer shall, unless otherwise agreed, not take any risk. The buyer shall not take any risk of deterioration in the goods necessarily incidental to the cost of transit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Only that I was consulting with the senior counsel there, that maybe when we go to the third reading, there's something we shall consider in the section delivery of goods. You see, through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to tell you, and the Attorney General knows this, that in a contract of sale of goods, if you visit the Income Tax Act, there are processes that the seller can take all risks of transferring your goods with all risks. And then there is a stage where a buyer can agree to take all risks. But as we are seeing this in section 41, which we have just passed, we are not catering for that particular area, and I don't want to bring it back because it can come at the third reading. So the way we can handle section 42 is when we have remedied the issue of the two, the seller and the buyer. Where do they have the risk? Because delivery has different procedures and it is fully stated in the Income Tax Act. I don't know whether the Attorney General can give proper guidance, because now here in the 42 we are only looking at the seller's advantages other than also looking at the side of the buyer, because you can also have a contract where delivery is at the delivery is on his side to incur all the risks. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, I think you can help me in this particular area, or the Attorney General.
Yes, Buvuma.
Mr. Chairman, when I look at how it is phrased here, I want to read it. Where the seller of goods agrees to deliver the goods with who? Because the seller, if he's agreeing with the buyer, then that would be acceptable. That at any place that goods would be, I will take the risk. But it is not shown here that the seller agrees with the buyer. Secondly, when I proceed, that when the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk, at a place, this one, not this, other than what were they, other than that where they are when sold. This means again a different place. If you're taking goods to a different place, first of all, I've not agreed with you as a buyer. Then why do I, as a buyer, take the risk?
Mitoma.
Right, Honorable, Mr. Chairman, it might help to look at 43. Because in 43, where the buyer has not inspected the goods before, he's now able to inspect them and accept them. So, if for 42, he has inspected the goods and accepted them, and they are to be delivered to him at some destination, then maybe he's already bound because he has already inspected the goods. Otherwise, 43 would be redundant.
Honorable members, I'd like you to look at what is proposed by the committee properly.
I think to appreciate the import of this clause, members have to know that delivery can take place at the place where the goods are sold. You can sell goods and the buyer takes delivery at the place where you have sold the goods. But this clause is saying where the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk at a place other than where they are, when sold, the buyer shall, unless otherwise agreed. Now, this is why I say maybe what was meant, what was envisaged was otherwise agreed, not take any risk of deterioration in the goods necessarily incidental to the cost of transit. You see,
that is why you might need to look at what the committee has proposed. They propose to substitute for the word buyer, seller.
No. If you say not, shall not, you are exonerating the buyer from taking it. You see, the seller has agreed to deliver the goods at his own risk to a place other than where they are sold. That is the seller delivering them. Now, if the seller has agreed to deliver the goods at a place other than where they are sold, then the buyer shall, unless otherwise agreed, not take any risk of deterioration. The buyer, because the seller has agreed, shall not take any risk of deterioration in the goods.
Read it with the seller also. Read it with the seller and see what it's like.
With the seller? Where the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the seller's own risk at a place other than that where they are when sold, the seller shall, unless otherwise agreed, take any risk. Oh, if you put the word seller,
Well, it actually makes it better.
yeah, when you put the when you substitute seller for buyer, it makes sense.
It does. That's what the committee has proposed.
Yes, well. So we substitute the word seller for buyer. Oh, the other way around, okay. Buyer for seller.
Honorable Rute.
Thank you, Chair. For me, I would prefer that in the first line, where we have the seller of goods agrees to deliver them at the buyer's own risk. That is where the all clause will make meaning. In the first sentence, where they say the seller's own risk, it should actually be the buyer's own risk. Then it will make sense, the whole clause.
I'm going to put the question proposed by the committee. to substitute for the word buyer, the word seller in that second line of this. I put the question to that amendment. All those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 42 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 42 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 43.
I put the question that clause 43 stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 44.
I put the question that clause 44 stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 45.
I put the question that clause 45 stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 46.
I put the question that clause 46 stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 47.
I put the question that clause 47 stands part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 48.
48, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes amendment to clause 48(3)(c) that is substitute for the phrase section 48, the phrase section 49 to ensure correct cross-referencing. And we have another amendment on B, 48, which is B on 48(4). The amendment on 48(4) is that we insert the word remedies between the word other and the are, appearing in line 3 of the provision. Justification is for clarity.
$48, 3C. Yes. Killer.
Mr. Chairman, I have something on 48 2A.
No, let's process what the... Is that what was proposed by the chair?
No.
Can I finish with what he has proposed, then I come to...
Okay.
So that we don't get... Let's deal with 48... 3C, section 49, the cross-referencing. How do we read that from? Where do we read that from? How sure are we it is section 49?
Mr. Chairman, this section 48 that we are reading now is right to repair or replace goods. And section 49 is about the right to reduce price, to reduce purchase price or rescind contract. So in 48(3)(c), we are saying, where the buyer shall not require the seller to repair or replace the damaged goods if that damage is C, disproportionate in comparison to any appropriate reduction in the price, in the purchase price under section 49. So section 49 is where we find the right to reduce the purchase price and rescind contract.
Okay, that's clear. And the first one?
That is the first amendment. On the second,
the second one?
The second amendment is to insert the word remedy between the word other and the are, appearing in line 3 of the provision. That is 48(4). 48(4) reads that a remedy is disproportionate in comparison to the other remedies where it imposes costs on the seller, which, in comparison to those imposed on him or her, by the other are unreasonable, taking into account the following. So we are saying that between the word remedies and the word, other and are, it should read that a remedy is disproportionate in comparison to the other remedies. I beg indulgence, Mr. Chairman, just a moment.
Do you still see a problem with it? Chair?
Mr. Chairman, we are looking at section 48 or clause 48.4, and we are saying that between the word other and are, we should put the word remedies. And this is what it should read. That a remedy is disproportionate in comparison to the other remedies, where it imposes costs on the seller, which in comparison to those imposed on him or her by the other remedies are unreasonable, taking into account ABCD. So we are saying between other and are, we should put the remedies, because it is for purposes of just making it clear.
Attorney General?
I think procedurally, we first consider clause 49, and when we pass it, we go back to 48. Because 48 is trying to refer to an article we have not considered. Suppose we first approve the import of the article which is referred to in 48, and we see whether it makes sense. Can't we stand over 48?
Is it necessary? The cross-referencing, I think, has no problem. But now the issue of other is the insertion of the word other remedies. That's all that is there. It's saying, in comparison to those imposed on him or her by the other remedies. Because the same phrasing is put in the first line there, to the other remedies, where it imposes. Is that okay? Lord Attorney General? Yes. That's fine? Can you be on record on that, Lord Attorney General? Can you be on record on that?
That's okay. Inserting the word remedies between the words other and are.
No, between the words other and the comma.
And the comma?
Because there's a comma between there's a comma before are.
Okay. That's correct.
So the proposal is to insert the word remedies immediately after the word other in the third line there. Okay, that is the amendment. So the committee has proposed those two amendments. Can I put the question? You still have another one? Can I put the question amendments proposed by the committee? Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Yes, Honorable Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm on clause 2, where it says, where the buyer requires the seller to replace or repair goods, the seller shall A, repair or, as the case may be, replace the goods within a reasonable time. Mr. Chairman, my concern is on the word reasonable time. We need to define what reasonable time is. From the seller's perspective, it may mean 10 years as being his reasonable time. From the buyer, it may mean 1 week as being his reasonable time. So I propose, Mr. Chairman, if you could give the time frame so that it guides both the seller and the buyer. Leaving it open like this may not be all that so appropriate. So I propose, Mr. Chairman, if you could give it like within 3 months, that would be better. Thank you.
There are two time frames there. There could be a different time frame for repair and a completely different time frame for replacement. If you are ordering a car from Japan and all you are going to repair by spraying some dent on some area, it's a whole wide different time frame. That's why they are saying reasonable. Yes.
I think, to inform my colleague here, these contracts vary. It depends on the time of the contract you set out. If it's about bringing a car, it's about selling sugar, it is within the contract that you agree on the time of delivery. So when they talk about within reasonable time, it must fit within the time you contracted to deliver. So if you give yourself 3 months and the contract was for 2 weeks, so where is the repair going to take place? So you cannot express the time here because contracts vary.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, following the explanation, I concede.
Okay, thank you.
Clause 48 as amended.
I now put the question to clause 48 as amended. Clause 48.
Mr. Chairman, I have a problem because this subclause connotes that the moment the buyer requires, the seller is obliged. Suppose the seller has an objection. Because he said where the buyer requires the seller to replace or repair the goods, the seller shall. But circumstances may be such that it is not necessary.
There's paragraph 3.
Paragraph 3?
Yes. Subclause 3.
The buyer.
There's an examination process there. Can I put the question? I put the question that clause 48 as amended stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 49.
I put the question that clause 49 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 50.
I put the question that clause 50 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 51.
I put the question that clause 51 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 52.
I put the question that clause 52 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 53.
Clause 53, I put the question that stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 54.
I put the question that clause 54 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 55.
55, I put the question that clause 55 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 56.
I put the question that clause 56 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 57.
I put the question that clause 57 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 58.
Clause 58, I put the question that clause 58 stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 59.
I put the question that clause 59 stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 60.
I put the question that clause 60 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 61.
I put the question that clause 61 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 62.
I put the question that clause 62 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 63.
Clause 63, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes two amendments in this particular clause. 63(1), the committee proposes that insert the word or supplier between the words seller and for, appearing in line 3 of this provision. Justification is for clarity, and or supplier, we are addressing the service part of it. Then we have an amendment.
No, but how will it be housed? Or supply of services?
We are saying 63(1).
Word sale.
We are saying the word or supplier between seller and for. That's in line 3.
So, action against the seller? Action against the seller?
Against the seller or supplier for. Or supplier.
Or supplier.
Yes.
Okay. Or supplier.
Yes.
You are saying supplier of services?
That's true, Mr. Chairman.
Won't supplier just be sufficient? The word supplier won't be sufficient?
It is seller, we are saying seller or supplier.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Because we amendment was saying supplier of goods or supplier of services rather. I think
Or supplier of services. If we put it or supplier,
just all supplier would be sufficient.
I would concede to that one. Let's put or supplier, meaning that it is for the services.
Yeah.
But then we have another one, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, which
Yes.
is in subclause 4. The committee proposes that subclause 4 of this particular clause should be deleted. And the justification is that this particular provision is redundant since it is catered for under subclause 1 of this very clause.
Honorable members, there are two proposals, one for deletion of subclause 4, and the other one is amending subclause 1 by inserting those words or supplier immediately after the word seller. So I start with the deletion. Yes.
I'm starting with the deletion of subclause 4.
4.
And it says where the supplier wrongfully neglects or refuses to deliver the service. That is purely what I said before, that is a contract of service. The one in 64(1) provides for contract of services or goods. So we need to distinguish the two. So I want us to maintain subclause 4. It is very relevant because it caters for the contract of service as opposed to contract of services.
It has been amended. Mr. Chairman, I think the amendment, if it was carried, of 63(1) takes care of subclause 4. In 63(1), the chair proposed an amendment to say where the seller, yeah, if you can read it to, you'll hear that it really serves the purpose.
There's still a problem. There's still a problem in one. If you want to combine, would you want to leave the word seller alone in the first line? If now you want to combine everything in that subclause.
Mr. Chairman, if you can read the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, we have proposed this amendment on 63(1), that it should read that where the seller wrongfully neglects or refuses to deliver the goods.
That is where I'm saying, shouldn't you have also put the supplier? Though the supplier is on the second one.
On the third line.
The third line.
Yeah.
There are two places. There's first line, then there's the last.
Most obliged, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I think after seller in the first line, we should equally put or supplier. And move to do the same in the third line, and then delete subclause 4.
Then that one
Justifies the deletion of 4.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I listened to the chair. He said, when he was proposing amendments to 1, he said, where the seller or supplier.
No, initially didn't say that. Initially it was on the third line only.
In the third line only? Okay. Now, if you put it here or supplier, then it caters for 4.
Honorable Chair, it does not, for one simple reason. We need to understand the qualifying statement here, or expression or notion. The notion is goods or supply or services. Supply of services. Once you say supply of services as opposed to supply of the service, you are looking at two contracts. Remember, this law is basically creating contracts, how they should be enforced, implemented, and executed. So once you mention services, you are talking about a contract of services. And once you say it is a contract of service, you have qualified that particular service. And that is the relevancy of subclause 4. I think my land
contract, honorable member, a contract of service is an employment contract. It's not part of this.
Contract of
service is an employment contract.
Yes.
It's not part of this.
It is here.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to clarify on this.
Yeah.
If you have a bill, you would be interested in looking at clause 3, subclause 2, which says, notwithstanding subsection 1, a contract of service or apprenticeship is not a contract for the supply of services.
Correct.
And I think what you are talking about is what is dealt with in this particular provision. So we are actually looking at the contract for services.
Even if he was to, actually, he has to believe that 63(1) has totally no difference between it and the 4, after amending the word seller.
So can I now put the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put the question deletion first, deletion of 4. I put the question, or we start with the other one. I put the question deletion of subclause 4 of clause 63. All those in favor say to the contrary, no. There is have it. I now put the question to amendment proposed in 63(1). Clause 63(1). I put the question, will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 63 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 63 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 64.
I put the question that clause 64 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 65.
I put the question that clause 65 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 66.
I put the question that clause 66 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 67.
I put the question that clause 67 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 68.
Clause 68, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes to amend clause 68, which is on variation of implied terms, to insert the word or supply of services immediately after the word sell in line 1. Justification. The proposal is to insert the word or the words or supply of services immediately after the word sell in line 1. The justification is to broaden the provision to include the supply of services. It would be a consequential amendment as we have already adopted it.
Attorney General, can I put a question on that proposal? I put the question, will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 68 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 68 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 69.
I put the question that clause 69 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 70.
Clause 70. I put the question that stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 71.
I put the question that clause 71 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 72.
I put the question that clause, yes, Kalungu West.
Mr. Chairman, clause 72, powers over the minister to amend the schedule. The minister may by special instrument, with the approval of cabinet, amend the schedule to this act. I would wish to give powers to Parliament.
On currency points?
I concede.
I put the question that clause 72 stands part of the bill. With those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 73.
73, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, clause 73, the committee proposes to draft the provision to read as follows. The Sale of Goods Act, that is on repeal, clause 73, to read as follows. The Sale of Goods Act, cap 82, and the Bulk Sales Act, cap 69, are repealed. Justification is to clarify on it. It is already captured in the object of the bill.
Can I put the question to that amendment?
Clause 73.
I put the question to that amendment. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 74. Clause 73 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 73 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 74.
I put the question that clause 74 stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
The schedule.
I put the question that the schedule to the bill stands as scheduled to that bill. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Clause 1.
Clause 1, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I will need your guidance on this because we have quite a number of amendments on clause 1. Probably I will bring one by one.
General, present all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, they are definitions, eh?
Yes, it is
No, let's
definition.
deal with them one by one.
Oh, thank you. Master Blake, Mr. Chairman. Clause 1, A. That is the definition of buyer. The committee recommends that you draft the definition of buyer trade as follows. That buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy goods, or who procures or agrees to procure services. The justification is for clarity and to broaden the definition to include an agreement to procure services.
Clause 1 is definition, yes. So now we are dealing with definition. Clause 1, you are looking at the object of the bill. The word buyer is defined on page 5 of the bill, if you have the original bill.
Can I read it again? We are looking at the definition of buyer. The current definition in the bill is that buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy goods or procures services. The proposed amendment is that buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy goods or who procures or agrees to procure services. So, it is bringing in the element of agreeing to procure. In other words, future provision of services.
Is bringing in a repetition. And it's a repetition. Let me read it. Buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy goods or procure services. What is there is just enough. Yeah. He has catered for what you are saying. All agrees, all. To buy, all agrees to.
I'm sorry, but Honorable Sewong, you are not getting it right. First of all, look at buyer and its definition, just on the goods part. It says a person who buys or agrees to buy. That is for the side of goods. Now for services, we are saying it should be a person who procures or agrees to procure. So it is a consistency. As we are defining goods, the same way, breadth, we should be also applied for the supply of services.
Can I put a question on that amendment? Will those in favor say aye to the contrary? No. The ayes have it. Next, Chair.
Still on definition of goods, that's the clause 1. The committee proposes that insert a new paragraph D immediately after paragraph C, read as follows: undivided share in goods held in common. And the justification is to broaden the definition of goods to include sale of a share in undivided goods.
Is that clear, members? I put that amendment. Those in favor say aye to the contrary? No. The ayes have it. Next.
The third amendment we are proposing is on definition of specific goods. And the committee proposes that we insert the words and includes undivided shares in specific goods held in common at the end of the provision. Justification: it is a consequential amendment arising from the amendment proposed under the definition of goods.
I put the question to that. Will those in favor say aye to the contrary? No.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next.
Definition of supplier. Those who have the report, it is page 10. We are looking at page 10. The committee proposes that we insert the words supplies or immediately after the word who. That is in the definition of the word supplier. The justification for this, it shall be therefore that supplier means a person who supplies or agrees to supply services. The justification is to broaden the definition of supplier to cater for situations where there is actual supply of services. Consistency.
I put the question to that amendment. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no? The ayes have it. Next, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the committee proposes that we insert the following definitions in their alphabetical order. Data message means data generated, sent, received, or stored by computer means and includes A, voice, where the voice is used in any automated transaction, and B, a stored record. Mr. Chairman, shall I go to another definition?
No,
or
let's
first?
deal with that. Let's deal with that. We agreed we'll be handling them one by one. That data message, is that used anywhere in the bill? Is it used in the bill? Can you show us where?
Mr. Chairman, it has been used, and if you can grant me just one second,
Because
2 seconds.
it's used in the bill?
Yes, yes. That's why we are capturing it here for definition. We could not define it when it is not in the bill.
Honorable,
Mr. Chairman, the definition section is to define words, verbs, or things used in this law. If it's not used anywhere in this law.
it's clause 5(1).
But you said it's not used. Is it used?
It's used at least once. The clause 5(1). Clause 5(1) has that word, that phrase, data message, and I don't know where there's any. The other one was deleted.
Since it is used, that's okay.
Okay, proceed. Have you defined it already? Yes, is that definition okay for data message? I put the question that amendment. Those in favor, say aye, to the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Next, Chair.
The next definition is services. And the committee proposes that a definition be given for services as follows. That services means any service or facility provided for gain or reward or otherwise than for free charge, including services or facilities for A.
Can you read that again, please?
This is the term services to mean.
Please read the text.
Yes, services means any service or facility provided for gain or reward or otherwise than free of charge, including services or facilities for A. Banking, insurance, grants, loans, credit, or financing. B. Amusement, cultural activities, entertainment, instruction, recreation, or refreshment. C. Accommodation, transport, travel, parking, or storage. D. The care of persons, animals, or things. E. Membership in a club or organization or any service or facility provided by the club or organization. And F. Any rights, benefits, privileges, obligations, or facilities that are or are to be provided, granted, or conferred in the course of services, but it does not include services provided under a contract of employment.
Is that okay, members? Yes. I put the question to that. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary, no? The ayes have it. Next, Chair.
Unascertained goods. Definition. Unascertained goods. Unascertained goods means goods not identified or agreed upon at the time the contract is made.
Can you read again, please, if you're reading the same text?
Unascertained goods means goods not identified and agreed upon at the time the contract is made. The justification is for clarity.
Members, can I put the question to that? Will those in favor say to the contrary? No. The ayes have it.
Clause 1 as amended.
You still have other amendments? In clause 1?
Yes.
Proceed.
Clause 1(3). To draft the provision, that is clause 1(3), read as follows. That in determining, read as follows. In determining whether a person is insolvent within the meaning of this act, reference shall be made to the Insolvency Act of 2011. Justification is to ensure consistency with the Insolvency Act of 2011.
Is that clear, members? I put the question to that amendment. Will those in favor say to the contrary? No. The ayes have it.
Clause 1 as amended.
I now put the question that clause 1. Yes, Land Attorney General.
Before we approve the clause, I listened to some formulation which includes services for free. Huh? Other than services for free, I withdraw.
You have not proposed anything. There's nothing to withdraw. I now put the question that clause 1 stands part of the bill. Will those in favor say to the contrary? No. The ayes have it.
Motion for the House to resume. The short title.
No title.
The title of the bill.
Honorable members, I now put the question that the title to the bill remains as title to the bill. Will those in favor say to the contrary? No. The ayes have it.
Motion for the House to resume.
Honorable Minister.
Yes. Chairman, I beg to move that the House do resume and the committee or the whole House has considered the bill entitled Sale of Goods and Supply of Services.
No, please move the motion properly, Honorable.
Do report.
So can you leave the Honorable Minister to
Do
move?
report.
No, please move the motion for resumption of the House.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I beg to report. To move that the committee of the whole House consider.
We're resuming.
Do resume. The House do resume. And the committee on the bill entitled The Sale of Goods and the Supply of Services Bill 215 be passed with amendments.
Honorable members, the motion is for resumption of the House. To enable the committee of the whole House report, I put the question to that motion. Will those in favor say to the contrary? No. The ayes have it.
A report from the Committee of the Whole House.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I beg to move that the committee of the whole House.
Honorable Minister, you are reporting. You're first reporting. You beg to report.
Yes. I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House consider the bill entitled The Sale of Goods and Supply of Services, Bill 215, and passed with amendments.
Motion for the adoption of the report from the Committee of the Whole House.
Honorable Minister, motion for adoption.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the report from the committee of the whole House be adopted.
Honorable members, the motion is for adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole House. I put the question to that motion. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Motion for the bill's third reading. The
Bill's third reading.
Bill's third reading. The Sale of Goods and Supply of Services Bill 2015.
Honorable Minister.
Right Honourable Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled the Sale of Goods and Supply of Services Bill 215 be read for the third time and do pass.
Honorable members, the motion is that the bill entitled the Sale of Goods and Supply of Services Bill 2015 be read for the third time and do pass. I put the question to that motion. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
The Sale of the Goods and Supply of Services Bill 2015.
Congratulations, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for processing this through, and for honorable members for the very elaborate concentration we have given to this bill. At least we have ticked this from our list of pending business. Thank you very, very much. Yes? Next item.
Mr. Speaker, just 1 minute to appreciate the Speaker and the House for the support.
No, I'm just doing my job. You don't have to appreciate me, please, member. Let's go with business.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You're appreciated for the support, and I appreciate the whole House for supporting us to have this bill sail through in such a record time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. You did a good job. Congratulations, Honorable Minister. Congratulations.
Yes.
Motion for a resolution of Parliament authorizing government.
Honorable Minister, you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to thank.
Yes, Honorable
Yes,
Minister.
Right Honourable Speaker and members of Parliament and members of the committee. I would like to thank you. For supporting this bill. It will definitely streamline the trade regime because we were using a very old law of 1923, but now I thank you for repealing the old one and approving the new one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for proposing it. Otherwise, it would still be using the 1932 one. Next item.
Motion for a resolution of Parliament authorizing government to borrow UA 5.84 million equivalent to US dollars 9.54 million equivalent from the African Development Bank Group, AFD, for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries, NELSAP.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, I beg to move a motion for Parliament to authorize government to borrow 9.54 million US dollars from the African Development Bank Group for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries project. I beg to move.
Is the motion seconded? No. Seconded by member for Bunko. Honorable member for Rushenyi. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Okay. Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, this is a supplementary budget to the supplementary loan to the original budget project that we approved in this House. And the objective of the project is to help strengthen East African regional power grid and facilitate power exchange within the region. Originally, the scope of the project included 127 2.7 kilometers of 220 kV transmission lines from Bujagali via Tororo substation to Uganda-Kenya border, 63 of 220 kV transmission line from Balala substation via New Melama substation to Uganda-Rwanda border, and the revised scope now, which has necessitated the supplementary loan, comprises of construction 132.2 kilometers of 220 kVs double circuit transmission in line with Bujagali via Tororo substation to Uganda-Kenya border, among other items that the supplementary budget loan will finance. And Mr. Speaker, the chair of the committee and members have considered this request, and they are now ready to report about this matter for the House debate and adoption. I beg to move.
Honorable members, the motion that I'll propose for your debate is a motion for resolution of Parliament to authorize government to borrow units of account 5.84 million, equivalent of United States dollar 9.54 million, from the African Development Bank Group for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries. That is the motion I propose for your debate, but this request when it was presented, we referred it to the committee, or our committee, or national economy, and to start off the debate, the chair should report on a summary of their findings and what they recommend this House to do. Chair?
Honorable Speaker, sir, and honorable colleagues, I'm here to present a report of the Committee on National Economy on the proposal to borrow unit of accounts 5.84 million, equivalent to US dollar 9.54 million from the African Development Bank Group for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, and honorable members, the Committee on the National Economy considered this the request by government to borrow US dollar 9.54 million from the African Development Bank Group for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids in the Nile Equatorial Lakes region in accordance with rules 166 section 2B of the Parliamentary Rules of Procedure. The request was presented to this House by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development on 2nd February 2017 and was accordingly referred to the Committee on the National Economy for consideration. Methodology. The committee held meetings with the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Minister of Energy and Minerals, and the committee studied and made reference to the following documents: the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development brief on the loan request, appraisal documents, and the draft loan agreement between the Republic of Uganda and the Africa Development Bank Group. Project objective. The objective is to help strengthen the East African regional power grid and facilitate power exchange within the region. The project, the Uganda side initial scope comprised of construction of 127.7 kilometers of 22 kV transmission line from Bujagali via Tororo substation to the Uganda-Kenya border, and 66 kilometers of 22 kV transmission line from Mbarara substation via New Mirama substation to the Uganda-Rwanda border, and the extension of Jagali, Mbarara, Tororo substations, and construction of a new substation at Mirama. The revised scope and proposed supplementary loan in Uganda comprise the construction of one, 132.1 kilometers of 22 kV double circuit transmission line from Jagali via Tororo substation to the Uganda-Kenya border. 2, 66.55 kilometers of 22 kV double circuit transmission line from Barara North substation via Mirama substation to the Uganda-Rwanda border. And 3, the extension of 220 kV Jagali switchyard, construction of the new 220 132 kV Mbarara North substation, construction of a new 220 kV Tororo substation, and construction of a new 220, 132, and 33 kV Mirama substations. Status of implementation of the project in Uganda. Following signing of ADB loan agreement on 13th May 2009 and JICA loan on 26 March 2010, the ADB's conditions precedent to first disbursement were fulfilled on 17th July 2011, and procurement of services started immediately. Procurement of services and goods and works. The project implementation agency, the Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, UETCL, signed contracts on 16th of June 2011 with the project supervision consultant. 29th November 2012 with the EPC contractors for the transmission lines construction, and 6th December 2012 with the EPC contractor for substations construction. So the project, Mr. Speaker, is ongoing and estimated at about 75% completion. Project cost and financing. The initial financing arrangement for Uganda's portion of this project of interconnection were the African Development Bank, JICA, and the Government of Uganda, with an AFDB loan of unit of account 7.59 million, which was about 15.77%, JICA loan of 5,406 million, which was Japanese yen, which was about 77.85% of the project financing, and 37.48 units of accounts from the Uganda government contribution, which was about 6.38%. The terms and conditions of the loan. The FDB loan facility would have the following terms. The loan amount, unit of accounts, the additional loan we are requesting now, we considered 9.54 million, maturity period 40 years, including grace period of 10 years, commitment charge 0.5% on the unwithdrawn financing balance, and service charge of 0.75% on the withdrawn and outstanding credit balances. Project implementation. The Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, UETCL, is the executing agency of the project, and the project is being implemented by the UETCL Project Implementation Unit on behalf of the Ministry of Energy, which the Ministry playing a supervisory role. The Nile Equatorial Lakes Subsidiary Action Plan Regional Coordination Unit on behalf of NBI is responsible for the project coordination and supervision at the regional level. In discharging its coordination and supervisory duties, it is guided by the project technical committee drawn from power system operations and planning experts from participating power utilities and ministries responsible for the electricity. The loan and current debt situation of the country. The loan will increase total nominal public debt that is currently at US $8.5 million as at the end of November 2016. External debt contributes 60% of the total debt, while 40% is domestic debt. The debt sustainability analysis conducted in November 2016 revealed that in both the medium and long term, Uganda's public and publicly guaranteed external debt is sustainable, and the country is under no debt distress when subjected to stress tests. With the present value of public debt to GDP ratio at 24.6% as of end of November 2016, this is relatively below the public debt management framework threshold of 50%. Committee observations. Honorable Speaker, sir, honorable colleagues, substantial worldwide increase in price for various items of the project materials, both local and imported, and installation prices. So there is substantial worldwide increase. Such increase of materials and equipment prices has resulted in higher bid prices compared with the original project cost estimate at appraisal stage. Downsizing the project scope or design after bid opening would jeopardize the completion time and achievement of project objectives, given that the project is part of a coherent program of regional interconnection projects involving 5 countries. Depreciation of the loan currencies, that is the unit of account, and the Japanese yen against the contract currencies, the US dollar and the euro, resulted in utilization more of the loan amounts. The procurement process has been completed 4 years after the bank approved the loan, and the project completion time also extended due to several reasons. Introduction of design changes, such as the construction of new 220 132 kV Mbarara substation instead of extension of existing Mbarara substation, required a new control building, wider substation area to accommodate future lines and additional equipment, consequently increasing the project costs. Variation orders to change the optical ground wire of 24 fibers with the 48 fibers to harmonize the specification with the neighboring countries resulted in increased costs. Unforeseen ground conditions and terrain resulting in changes in transmission line towers and foundation types occurred due to transmission line crossing on swampy area and hilly landscape, which increased the cost. The committee noted poor planning on the side of government, which didn't incorporate the requirements for Uganda to participate in the East African power pool, where Kenya and Ethiopia are going to trade in power between themselves. Uganda has a comparative advantage in this power pool, but is going to miss out due to poor planning. In preparation for this power pool, Kenya and Ethiopia have constructed interconnections of 140 kV, whereas Uganda is going to interconnect with Kenya at 220 kV, which puts it at a disadvantage if it has excess power to trade. It has further noted that the lines which have been constructed so far cannot be upgraded without dismantling the entire newly constructed infrastructure if they are to interconnect with Kenya at 440 kV. Committee recommendations. Since Uganda is part of the East African community, when planning for infrastructure project connecting with the region, government should take into account the projected infrastructure in the region in order to avoid the mismatch manifested in this project. Since Uganda is now constructing hydropower projects to avoid capacity which may not be fully utilized by Uganda, government should plan to sell off the excess power to avoid paying for redundant capacity. Government should also consider constructing a complete system to evacuate power and also distribute it in order to minimize on losses incurred when government constructs infrastructure without ready transmission and distribution lines. In the case of Jagali, we are paying for redundant capacity. Conclusion. Right Honorable Speaker, sir, and colleague members of Parliament, considering the high investments so far made in this project, the committee recommends that the requests by government to borrow $9.54 million from the African Development Bank for supplementary loan of the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries be approved by Parliament. I beg to report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I beg to lay on table a signed report of the paper of the report I've just read, the minutes of the meetings of the committee that considered the loan request, a loan brief by the Minister of Finance, a brief status on the project by UETCL, and responses to questions that the committee asked UETCL to clarify. I beg to lay, Honorable Speaker.
Let the records capture all those documents that have facilitated the committee in doing its work and also the original text of the report of the committee. Debate starts now. May I know how many members would like to speak on this matter so that I can determine the time? That means we'll be speaking for 2 minutes each so that we can cover all the members that have stood. 2 minutes. And I'll start from Masaka Municipality.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
2 minutes.
Right Honorable Speaker, two things in 2 minutes. One is that we agree in principle that we need to take power to the people, and of course, power is needed badly to facilitate regional trade and integration. My challenge, Right Honorable Speaker, is that while we are trying to project the requirements for power to facilitate regional trade and regional business, we have a very big crisis in helping our people internally to access power. At the moment, we have standard projects in the ministry that use board funds to take power to communities, and they're not using this money. The minister can actually speak to it that they have money redundant over projects, either halfway done, not done, late projects. And here we are in a hurry to again borrow, to extend power, to facilitate cross-border, near-border. We haven't addressed the immediate power requirements within the immediates of our communities that are facing a very big crisis in accessing power and utilizing power. Some of the power is moving atop their houses. We had a crisis, I think, in the Bugisho sub-region. The Wananchi did the Harambe and they tapped it in their own style, and there was a problem. This part explains that, yes, this might be in tandem with NDP2, but planning without plans leads us into crisis. And I think these loans had better be considered to first address matters in our immediacy before we think afar. We love these loans, we want to extend power. Right Honorable Speaker, can I report to the House that we actually have excess power unconsumed in the country? We have excess capacity over power.
Kalungu West.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Actually, I am not happy with the Ministry of Energy. In the 9th Parliament, we passed a loan where we are giving, and I will bring records, Mr. Speaker, because of Kalungu district, I think Kamuli, and some other 3 districts. It's now about 3 years. And I have moved to the Ministry of Energy. They sent me an email here about how they are going to split the power in the whole district in April. Now here comes another loan. You see, this business of waiting for members of parliament, after hearing that they have supported loans, to start pumping into your offices all the time to follow up the loans, how their project is going to move, is not helping. Secondly, when you get these loans, you know the inflation levels of this country. Money loses value. Now look at this loan of Kalungu. I don't know what's happening. And it's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that 2 ministers are not here. It's only the Prime Minister. When we were amending the Income Tax Act, Honorable was here, giving a lot of vigor to the House. Now here comes the loan. She's not around. They have left the chairperson to move on the issue of the loan. These loans we are taking and they're not performing. We wait for them. Now, how is the Kalungu benefiting? After having passed the loan here, and we are here now, every time ringing them, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, we have to do something. These people should give us all they should direct them to give us all the loans they have taken and the performance in Ministry of Energy. Because that's how they tell us misleading information, how the power is going to be reduced and all that. Now we have rushed to think about East Africa. In a plane, you cannot put an oxygen gadget on yourself, on somebody near you before you put on yourself. We are having our loans. Now we are thinking about East African region integration, which is very okay. But these countries we are talking about, you go to Rwanda and sell their loans.
Samia Bugwe, North.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the committee for the extensive work that they have done to come up with this report. Right Honorable Speaker, I stand to bring our outcry to this House. It is not bad for us to borrow money, especially for important projects like this. I come from Bukedi sub-region, where Tororo substation is actually located. But Right Honorable Speaker, you'll bear with me that Bukedi sub-region is one of the sub-regions that are under-electrified in Uganda. Look at my constituency, for example. We almost have all sub-counties without power, but we are now extending power to cross-border. We need to be sincere and honest to Ugandans who pay taxes realistically. We cannot think about extending power to cross-border when our people who are paying taxes to pay these loans are still struggling. We need to open our eyes. We appreciate the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Energy, but a lot must be done to our local people, especially in regard to rural electrification, Mr. Speaker. We need to move and really get statistics, which sub-counties, which districts are still lagging behind. When you visit some districts, you really wonder whether your constituency is in Uganda.
Gomba West.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Mine was on the conditions of effectiveness of the loan, because it is conditional to, before we receive the first disbursement, that we must confirm amendment of the agreement for on-lending of the initial loan amount signed between borrower and UETCL to include proceeds of the supplementary loan, then the achievement of a disbursement rate, and other conditions include, amongst others, evidence of payment of compensation and or resettlement of persons affected by the project in accordance with the resettlement action plan. Time and again we've come up to talk about the chief government valuer. Compensation cannot be done without the Office of the Chief Government Valuer being beefed up. So this serves as a reminder that if seriousness is not applied in this very field, we shall fall back in this particular, in attaining the effectiveness of the loan. So we won't get the money for a start. So I was just calling upon the relevant office to do the needful, because every time we discuss a loan, it comes up time and again. So can something be done? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Wanzima Godfrey, Aringa North. I can see you have forgotten. I support the borrowing of the loan. I think this loan, when you look at it, it is in line with the principles of development in East Africa. It's not that maybe as a country we are trying to take power outside and the rest. Because when we talk about the East African community, the idea is that the development we have in Uganda must be in line with the other developments in the East African community. This was to do with the road network. Also electricity is one of it. We simply, I think this loan is to connect our power to the grid of other countries. So it's not that maybe the need for power in internal is being underlooked. I also believe that when we talk about standard gauge railway, still we shall also need power. In these lines, that will mean we must also put power lines that will facilitate this. Recently, we also talked about loan here, which was meant to electrify the rural areas, the sub-counties. So in that case, I support this view, because it's not that maybe government is only trying to forget internal problems, but government is trying to see into it that what other neighbors do, we should also be in line with them. It is all about, it's just the same way like trying to develop routes. The routes we have in Uganda must be connected to routes in Kenya or Tanzania. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is a healthy move. I beg to submit.
Bukoto? Microphone? Honorable member, please.
Okay. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I'm in agreement with the chairman of the committee and the report that we need supplementary loan to fulfill our national obligation regarding the East African community. But when you look at page 8 on terms and conditions, you find that there is no grace period for this loan. I wonder whether that one was considered. Grace period, 10 years. Otherwise, I'm in agreement with the entire proposal to have the supplementary loan. Thank you.
Bulamoji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to reiterate the words of Honorable Sewongu, this Parliament on the 20th of August 2015, we passed a loan of $100 million for rural electrification. This loan was supposed to extend power to different parts of the country, including Kaliro district, where I come from. But I must say it is now coming to 2 years, and work has not started on the ground. This was in the previous Parliament when this money was passed. So this issue of borrowing money and then having it not utilized is really breaking the backs of Ugandans. But Mr. Speaker, I want to support the recommendation of the committee Today, we are constructing many power generation stations, and right now, as we speak, we have excess power. But I mean, we don't have what to use this power for in the short run. I wonder whether anybody has sit to compute how much Uganda is going to be losing when Isimba and Karuma are completed and we are not using this power. Because it is power which we cannot keep in a store, you cannot keep it in a bag. I mean, we shall be producing this power and paying costs, interests on power which we are not using. So it is really justifiable that we must find a way of evacuating this power and selling it. Otherwise, we are having all this power which is not ready for use for Uganda today. But I want to say this as I summarize, Mr. Speaker, that agreements to sell power to neighboring countries must be properly executed. Of course, we have had different problems with our agreements as we make them. But they must be properly executed because
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would love to support the motion, the proposal of borrowing this money for this project of funding some electricity line. Mr. Speaker, my concern is on the issue of the pricing of this electricity. I don't know why in Uganda our electricity is quite expensive, and we are exporting it to other countries, and you know, and electricity is very cheap. When you go to Rwanda and Kenya, power is very cheap, and we are exporting this electricity to those countries. So we need to know really, why should we pay more money for this electricity? Yet we are exporters of this. We are producing power, we are exporting it, but we are paying much money. So we need to really know about this. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, you know, Uganda some time back was suspended by World Bank from doing further borrowing because of you know, failing to use the money in the right time, you know, that we do borrow. I think the Minister of Finance first went and pleaded with them to be allowed to again borrow some money. Maybe, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we shall now use this money in accordance to the item being read to us on the floor of the House. Because most of the times we do borrow money and it does different things, you know, and this actually puts us in a dilemma as a country. And again, the duration, I'm seeing 40 years of paying this loan. 40 years from now, I hope Mayor will be around 80 years, 80 something years. And we are borrowing every day. So this means that really, how shall we sustain all this borrowing?
Don't worry, you'll be receiving the social assistance grant for the elderly, so you'll be fine.
15,000.
Erute?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion despite having my reservation about the public debt. First, I want the committee to be very clear. In bullet 12, in your recommendation, the committee is never clear whether they're actually recommending that the House should support this loan or not. The statement there is never clear, and it's actually very vague. I want the chairman to clarify. Look at bullet 12.0 and read your recommendation. You leave the House in suspense whether to actually support or not. But secondly, I want to take 2 points that you have highlighted. One, that Uganda is going to miss in the power selling pool because Kenya and Ethiopia have already agreed they are going to trade, and Uganda will be missing out. Secondly, you have also noted that the government has not taken into concern the planning. Actually, you are blaming government. I think as we approve this loan, those who have caused those losses that you have stated here must be held accountable. Because if at the time the countries were negotiating how to benefit from this project and our government officials were sitting or rather sleeping, it is quite embarrassing, and I think somebody must be responsible. Lastly, the issue of constructing transmission lines. and then the people who have offered their land, where these transmission lines pass through, misses out, is very absurd. Everywhere, all over the country, you find transmission line passing, supplying power to other people, and the people who are around there have not been catered for. In my constituency, I have this example. Recently, I had to call a meeting to calm down people who wanted to cut down the transmission power lines because they don't have power to the health center 4 and the secondary school. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Palisa? Is this Pali? No, this is Butaleja.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the chairperson for the statement, and I would also like to say that I support the statement and the borrowing because we want to promote industrial growth in the country. But my concern about industrial growth, in case we approve this loan, is that we must consider the rural areas for industrialization, because that is where we have the highest rate of unemployment for youths. If we concentrate only in Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono, we shall not solve this issue of unemployment in Uganda. Secondly, you can read from the mood of the members that they are in support of the proposal, but their concern is the absorption and the appropriation and maybe the duration that some of the projects take. They take very long, the bureaucracies are too long, and we need to have an improvement in this. Secondly, we have some projects that we were told that they are being funded by the World Bank, but it's like they have stalled because of the bureaucracies I've talked about. You find out that when you go to the offices, they tell you that they have not found people to make the designs. I don't know what you're going to do about this project that is coming on next. We want to see work being done very fast so that we don't wait for so long. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is that Kamuli?
Thank you so much, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I'm here also to second the chairperson by borrowing money from ADB, because when we talk about extension of power to our neighboring countries, that is East Africa, it is good and developmental. However, my area of concern is about the usage of this money. Whenever we borrow loans, as we've heard in the document, that some money was lying, actually was redundant. The power was redundant, we would not put it in use as it was planned. My request is that the minister should ensure the supervision that the money should go to the planned areas, not again to be redundant and not to divert our loan. Lastly, Right Honorable Speaker, as we've heard from my colleagues that most of our areas do not have power. If we are extending power to this, to East Africa, where we expect development, the minister should also ensure that the money that is borrowed should not be misused or diverted. Because in our areas, in our constituency, for example, my area, Kamali municipality, 40% of the people have power. So if we misuse that money, again, the country will be at a loss. I beg to move. Thank you so much, Right Honorable Speaker.
I will have Ajumani, Bubulo, Kawempe, Palisa, Agago. Then I come to Cassius.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to support, yes, the loan, the borrowing of the loan, but however, Right Honorable Speaker, I keenly read the report. I am concerned about the procurement process that took 4 years after the bank approved the loan. I want to know whether it was by design or by default.
Second, Right Honorable Speaker, in the level of our performance, Uganda has been always left behind. When we take the railway, the standard gauge railway, our performance is poor. Even in this one, our performance is very poor. Can we get assurance from government on how we are going to improve in the level of our performance so that we can compete within the region favorably? Lastly, Right Honorable Speaker, I'm concerned about stabilization of power in our country. Even the districts that do have power, the power is not stable, not even reliable at all. Even if it means bringing loan to stabilize power in our country, in our districts, when are you initiating that process? Because in a Juman district, the locals have gone to the extent of even naming it to be Aziko, something that you can never rely upon. It is embarrassing to us in government. When are you coming with better strategies to stabilize our power in our country? Thank you.
Ulu?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the report of the committee and wish to add that when you have some food, however little it may be, you can share with the neighbors. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to raise my issue with the rural electrification, especially when they have they contract out services. The contractors, when they reach the villages, they skip many people, and they only can serve only those who can pay 200,000 or give a cock. So those who are skipped don't feel happy. And that is why there is that temptation of hooking the power. And everybody, all members here, allege that it is the Bugisu region that has the highest number of thieves of power. But Right Honorable Speaker, it is because the contractors in the field don't do their job well. So if they did their work well and gave in to everybody on the line, if some people see power going over their heads, and yet they also need the power and they don't have the 200 or 200,000, it is not good. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that rural electrification should...
Point of order.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I'm sorry, Honorable colleague, but Right Honorable Speaker, I think we need to have the record clear. What I saw in the region where she represents is a criminality. People hook, power and even transport it over a kilometer. And when we went there as a Committee of National Economy, we were told, actually, people have died because of that illegal connection. And for Honorable Member to come and tell us here that it's because a contractor has not done a good job, it's because the power line is passing over them, I think if the record of Parliament records it that way.
Did you raise on a point of order?
Yes.
Okay.
It will be wrong for us, therefore, is the Honorable Member in order to justify a criminality that is happening within her area of jurisdiction and misleading this House to have it recorded on the floor of Parliament.
Honorable members, that should have been a point of information or clarification. Please, you now have the information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not dispute. I only said the temptation comes because people people are not well served. That is what I said, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to submit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd already picked, please, yes, Kawempe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of affordability when it comes to power, people having access to electricity. But having access to electricity alone is not enough. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we don't look at the affordability part of it, we shall continue electrifying our rural areas, urban areas, but when actually those who can afford are not many. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no way how we can save our forests without ensuring that our electricity is affordable. We support all initiatives, including this one. But I think we should also ensure that there is that kind of affordability. When you look at the lorries coming in Kampala of Chaco, it leaves a lot to be desired. And if the people in Kampala and other urban areas are still, most of them are still using, depending on Chaco for cooking, then what about rural areas? And finally, Mr. Speaker, I'm waiting for the day when the Minister of Finance will bring a loan for irrigation. A loan for irrigation is the loan we are waiting for that can really touch to all Ugandans, including our electorates.
Palisa?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank the committee chair for the report and reluctantly support it. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to make a comment on page 9 and 10 of the report. The committee makes a number of observations, about 8 observations. But I don't see the relationship between the condensed 3 recommendations with all the observations. So I would have thought that the observations were made purposely, and therefore recommendations should have been made thereafter, because these reports, these observations inform several other decisions and other actions of government. So for you to make an observation and you don't attempt to recommend means maybe you casually made the observations. But Mr. Speaker, I want to look at observation 6 and 8. In observation 6, the committee noted poor planning on the side of government, which didn't incorporate requirements for Uganda to participate in the East African Power Pool. You know, it has always, and when you go to 8, it further noted that the lines which have been constructed so far cannot be upgraded without dismantling the entire newly constructed infrastructure. This goes back to planning. What kind of people do we have in this planning function? Because I want to imagine even these lines that have to be dismantled in order to upgrade the entire line must have been constructed on loan. And that means a waste to government and an unnecessary cost to the taxpayer. I would really want to think that the government gets serious in planning. Because why should other people go ahead of us and we are always lagging behind? And yet we keep praising ourselves as good performers. So I feel that the committee made a right observation.
Agago.
Thank you, the right speaker, and allow me to thank also the committee for the report that they presented today. Right, Honourable Speaker, allow me to add my voice to the colleagues who have been thanking the committee for what they presented today. The Honourable Speaker, I do support this motion. I support the report that has been put in place, but I have a few observations that I think I should put on the record. One is the whole idea of, this has been said, but I need to emphasize this, the whole idea of borrowing money that we've been doing over and again, mortgaging this country, to the extent that if this was a company, we would be bankrupt by now, we would be under receivership. I think if we are going to do that, it needs to be taken seriously, and the threshold must be really met at the end of the day. We need stringent measures to make sure that there are priority sectors, that these loans are not just borrowed at will. I know that a number of objectives have been outlined. When I look at access, as one of my colleagues stated, I'm wondering, being in Agago, whether it is, I mean, most of my people cannot afford electricity. Many people are now going for solar and all that. I want to know whether it's still, we're still, we're dealing with the reality of the situation in Uganda today. Is access done through electricity, or do we need to invest in like solar supply and other things? The other thing that I wanted to say is, I mean, they talked about the debt ratio. I think the cost-benefit analysis need to be very clear in this case. When I look at this loan, I know that we've talked about poor planning. When I look at the amount that was initially borrowed, it was about 7.5 million, whatever. Now, it was about connectivity, whatever, to, now we are borrowing about $9.54 million additional. Now, this is a supplementary. I mean, at the end of the day, I would have thought that a supplementary is just some missing the target a little bit out of, but when the supplementary is actually more than the amount that.
Yes, I will now take, it is Bueju? Bukonjo East, sorry. So West will not speak. I'll have Kasese Municipality. I'll have Ngora. Then we go this way.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to present my reservation about the presented request. Right Honorable Speaker and the Honorable House, I am looking for that day when the Honorable Minister of Finance will say, for today, I'm not presenting this loan. Because day after the other, when he stands up, that's what we are expecting. And indeed, the country is having a big burden at the hands of the honorable members who are seated here today. The future is waiting to judge us. Right Honorable Speaker, we are talking of this loan, which is an investment. I expected that in the minister's presentation, he should have said that it is not our first time to engage in investing in power in other countries. And this is what we have so far gained as a country in terms of returns. And the impact of these returns in reflection of what the nationals would be paying in terms of power is as follows. Their Honorable Minister would be talking, seeing that the impact of what we are investing is for the good of our people. This has missed in your presentation. And to me, I thought that that was enough for us to say, let us revisit. The Honorable Member has just mentioned that what we are looking for in terms of supplementary seems to be even more than what we are supplementing. Indeed explaining.
Municipality?
Yeah. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Personally, I would also like to give a dissenting view and express my disappointment in the numerous amounts of loans that this Parliament has engaged itself with approving. Actually, if we are not careful, we are going to end up a clearing house for loans. At $8.718 billion debt burden, Uganda is in a debt distress. We cannot continue borrowing enormous amounts of money. 40 years, you can imagine, 40 years. At that time, I still wonder what the leaders at that time will do to serve Ugandans, because the whole country will have been mortgaged and it will have hit its debt ceiling. We are making it difficult for the future generation to access services by generously approving loans in this house. I would be happy if the minister came up with a specific energy requirement plan for this country, and also come up with options for renewable energy, so that as we approve the loans, we are very sure what we are approving these loans for and what the return on investment is going to be for the current and future generations. Because if we continue generously borrowing money, I think there will be a time where we shall be in need of that money and we shall have nowhere to borrow from because we shall have exceeded our limit. I would request members in this honorable house that we should prioritize which sectors we should be borrowing for. I had one honorable colleague talking about agriculture. I would be very happy to participate in approving a loan that is going to agriculture, a loan that is developing the tourism road network, because I know that one is a foreign exchange earner for this country, and therefore it is an economic stimulus approach. Recently,
let me have Kilak South, then I come this side now.
Yeah. Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, it is very important to have stable electricity for the country, and it's quite unfortunate, Right Honourable Speaker, as my colleague said, we are paying electricity very expensively compared to countries who are importing from this country. Right Honourable Speaker, we would like to get very clear explanation from the minister. Why are we paying higher than Rwanda and Kenya, who are getting electricity from this country? Right Honourable Speaker, instead of borrowing to supply other countries, we need to strengthen, for example, the rural electrification. Government came up with a very important program of electrifying all the villages in this country. But the power that we have currently in our villages, the power are not being connected to the health centers, are not being connected to the schools, is as good as useless. Instead of borrowing to take our electricity to other countries, let us borrow to strengthen our power within this country. And secondly, Honourable Speaker, currently, if you look at the electric poles that we have them, right now at this season, if you go to northern Uganda, northern Uganda normally have electricity maybe in a month, less than 20 days. All the electric poles are falling down, and right now we have messages coming on our phone. The Omeme people are telling Ugandans that you have to report all the broken poles, the leaning poles. Instead of borrowing, why not to borrow to change all the electric poles into metals? than the timbers that we have them currently. Right Honorable Speaker, it's very good to enjoy
Ngora.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the chair for the report. And as I support this request, Mr. Speaker, I remember in 2011, Poles were actually put in one of the training centers in Ora called Akisim Trading Center. From that time up now, that place has not been connected to electricity. But I'm shocked here, we are talking about Rojombora, we are talking about Kigali, Rwanda, we are talking about DRC, Congo, and Kenya. And then, for example, in rural areas, there is no electricity. For example, in Ngora, we normally take about 4 or 5 days without electricity. In Ngora here, where I come from, Ngora, 4 days, no electricity. And now here, 4 days, load shedding is still in Ngora. But here we are saying there's a lot of electricity, yet actually there in Ngora, no, there is no electricity. Now I'm asking the minister to tell us the problem of Ngora, why we should always be supporting loans specifically to take electricity to Kenya, to Rwanda, to DRC Congo, where a war is taking place, and Burundi. And yet there's no electricity here. Another place, that's why I'm actually, please, yeah.
Thank you, colleague. I want also to give this information to the minister that in addition to Ngora, east to west home is best.
Yes.
In Buvuma, there is nothing like electricity, plus other 3 districts, like the president or a state seat. How come you as ministers advise the president to put effort in such things, yet home there is nothing at all? What excess is there economically?
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, no problem.
Thank you, my colleague, for giving me way. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, I have been frequenting the Raya Secretariat in Nikamocha about the rural electrification program, especially in my area, Mitiana South. We have no pole there. It has never been there. These are guys who are telling me all the time that we are looking around for money. In fact, I'm surprised from the chairperson of the committee to present such a loan that is about to get money for people outside this country to serve other.
Are you debating now, member for Mitiana?
Information is that.
Honorable, please.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Am I protected, Honorable Speaker?
You are protected. Proceed.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I also want to support the proposal for borrowing the money because of the following reasons. One, I understand that we are having excess capacity from Bujagali, and yet we are to get more power from Isimbwa and other, Karuma and Isimbwa. So it means that we are going to have a lot of power. And if we are to benefit from this, from our neighboring countries, we need to have this program so that we can see how we can export this power to our neighboring countries to benefit, because our exports earning are less. So if we can earn from power is very paramount. However, I'm saying that we have some problems. Last time we had a loan that we got to connect lines in Kamwenge, in Kigezi, and in Bundibujo. But we have been having a problem. A lot of money was allocated to valuers to value money for the leeway in those areas where power was connected without having money for the leeway. Contractors were paid a hell of money. They presented a report, but up to this day, the people who are supposed to be compensated for the destruction of their crops and everything Up to this day, they have never been given money, and it is not indicated anywhere in our forthcoming budget. How are we going to make sure that as we prove this loan, even the leeway is budgeted for, so that we should not be tampered to delay the construction of these lines in order to benefit from them? I thank you.
Kasambia. Kasambia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I cannot support the issue of borrowing that loan. Yeah, in Kasambia, we have, I don't know that line, the old line, the poles, what we call the national grid. But the only thing we've benefited from that line is the vulgar of those guys who are pulling those poles that they are just giving to our community. So we've only benefited vulgar words from that grid, from that line. Why is it that the government cannot afford to give us step-down transformers in places where there are poles, such that we can benefit? Now, why should I support the loan to make sure that Rwanda, they can get all the power, when actually in my constituency we don't have power? Honorable members, at the end of our term, are we going to account and say when we are in parliament, you know, we passed a loan and we gave power to Rwanda, and you think people, they are going to vote you back when they don't have power, and you're telling them that you voted? So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I call upon honorable members, please let this loan be diverted to make sure that we can access rural electrification. When you go to this urea, when you go to IRA, what they tell you, the government has failed to get even money for co-funding when World Bank wants to give money to give power for our people in the village.
Idazumbe Maracha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I want to thank the committee for the presentation. However, I want to comment here that the situation of power in our country is like a situation where you cook food in your own home and serve it to the neighbors. It is a very unfortunate situation. I say it is unfortunate because the affordability of power is very prohibitive in this country, and that is why people are not able to connect power. We have power, it is there, but people are not connecting the power because it is very prohibitive. The costs are very high. Therefore, my appeal to the ministry is that they should revise the power rates and make it affordable to the rural poor. I want to say here again that we must be convinced by the ministry, in the case that we have this power exported, what is the profit margin that we are going to get from this export of power to the other countries that are in the surrounding? Otherwise, I support the motion, and I want to know the profit we are going to get. And secondly, this issue of affordability of power for the rural poor should be reviewed by the ministry to make sure that the rural population is served here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We will pause it here. I will have some responses from the ministers. And honorable ministers, I'd like you to focus this debate because the issue is on tariffs and the speaker is speaking. The issue on coverage, why are we talking about elsewhere when here there are issues? Loan performance, and why is a supplementary bigger than the original borrowing we are supplementing? Please concentrate on those issues, and otherwise I see concurrence with this loan, so let's finish it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues. Mr. Speaker, the original loan was unit of accounts 48.14 million. The supplementary is 5.84, which means it is 12% of the original figure. So it is not true that a supplementary is bigger than the original loan. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a supplementary loan. On the issue of coverage, Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, and I think Angola asked what we have for the people of Angola. We have good news for the people of Angola, because out of the 1,500 sub-counties we have in Uganda, there are only 287 sub-counties without power. And we are coming here, with another facility for parliamentary approval to cover the entire country at once. All of them that are left will be covered at once.
Proceed, Honorable Minister.
The issue, this project, Mr. Speaker, has gone 85%. It's a regional project. It's a two-way. We have power, and we'll have power after these dams have been constructed. If we have excess, we can export, we can sell to other countries. The same thing applies. If they have excess and we're in shortage, they will also give us. It's a two-way. That's why it is a regional project. Mr. Speaker, let me make this bold statement. And it keeps coming here every other time. Is our public debt position sustainable? Mr. Speaker, we now stand at $8.5 billion US, our external debt. And out of our position of debt, and out of that, 5.5 is external debt and 2.2 is domestic debt, which puts us at 35.4% to GDP, compared to other people like Kenya, which is now at 52%. Again, it's a threshold that we set ourselves as East African region. Uganda still remains sustainable. And I want to assure you that as long as we still continue to handle these issues, our position, Uganda will never go back to a situation where we will need rescue from Western world. Because after all, some of the monies that we are borrowing, Mr. Speaker, is going to cover the facilitation of production of oil in 2020. The moment we start getting oil out of the ground, we'll be able to access $2.5 billion US, which is almost half our national budget. And we'll be able to start paying off our debts. Hopefully, in a few years, we will be having a surplus. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, members, is the issue of tariff. And we had a very huge debate, you recall, Mr. Speaker, here a few days ago about Bujagali. And as a House, I must thank you once again that we took a decision to exempt Bujagali, the corporation tax, so that we can reduce our power tariff from 13.8 cents to 8.5 cents, which will be a huge reduction. And if this coupled with the production of power is Simba and Karuma, we see our tariff going down. That does not really exempt us from the performance and absorption of these loans, which we are together working on. And you requested, you yourself, Mr. Speaker, that this ministry comes to the floor of this House to present a position and performance of these loans, so that together, as leaders of this nation, can find solutions on how to solve the issues of absorption and performance. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, can I put the question to this matter? And we finish? Honorable members, I now put the question to the motion for resolution of Parliament to authorize government of Uganda to borrow units of account 5.84 million, equivalent of United States dollar 9.54 million, for the African Development, from the African Development Bank Group for a supplementary loan for the interconnection of electric grids of Nile Equatorial Lakes countries. I put the question to that motion. Will those in favor say aye? To the contrary, no. Aye. The ayes have it. Honorable members, the next item on the order paper, I am advised it is not ready. We will be dealing with those tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll also be dealing with the budget. We have a huge job tomorrow, because we are going to have to finish with the budget and supply and pass the appropriation bill. Tomorrow is the deadline. We cannot go beyond tomorrow, otherwise we'll be in breach of the laws we have passed ourselves. And we also have this loan that has gone into tomorrow. And I urge honorable members who have not been able to speak on this loan, I'll give you first priority to speak on the loan that is pending that will come tomorrow. So this House, therefore, will not be able to complete business if we only sit in the afternoon. And I'm urging the front bench to reconsider tomorrow, for purposes of the deadline that we have as a government and as a parliament, that this matter we should be able to handle tomorrow, starting from 10 o'clock. Honorable members, House therefore is adjourned to tomorrow, 10 o'clock.
We have cabinet, but we are going to